I never thought my own sister would be the one to destroy the happiest day of my life. Standing there in my Vera Wang wedding dress, surrounded by champagne stains and wedding cake crumbs, I watched my mother comfort the person who had just humiliated me in front of 100 guests. But what happened next changed everything between us forever. Sometimes the people we love most are the ones who hurt us deepest, and sometimes we have to hurt them back to save ourselves. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories that will make you think twice about family loyalty. Growing up in suburban Ohio, Sophia and I seemed like the perfect sister duo from the outside. But underneath that facade, our family was cracking apart piece by piece. When I was 16 and Sophia was 12, our parents divorced in a messy custody battle that left emotional scars on both of us. Dad moved to California with his new girlfriend, leaving Mom to juggle 2 jobs just to keep our middle-class lifestyle afloat. I stepped into the role of the responsible older sister without anyone asking me to. While Mom worked double shifts at the hospital during the day and cleaned offices at night, I made sure Sophia did her homework, packed her lunches, and got to soccer practice on time. I became more like a second parent than a sibling, and I thought I was doing the right thing by protecting her from the chaos of our broken family. My academic success came naturally, but it also came with sacrifice. While other teenagers were going to parties and dating, I was studying for advanced placement exams and tutoring Sophia through her struggling math grades. When acceptance letters arrived during my senior year, Northwestern University offered me a full academic scholarship that would change the trajectory of my entire life. The day I graduated summa cum laude, I felt like I had finally made something good come out of all the family pain, but Sophia saw things differently. As I excelled in college and she struggled through high school, the gap between us widened. She started making comments about how everything came easily to me, how I was the golden child who never had to work for anything. The truth was the opposite. I worked harder than anyone I knew because I understood that education was my ticket out of the financial insecurity that had defined our childhood. After college, I landed a position as a medical researcher at Northwestern Memorial Hospital in Chicago. The work was challenging and rewarding, and I felt like I was finally building the stable life I had always dreamed of. That is where I met David, a surgical resident with kind eyes and hands that saved lives every day. Our relationship developed slowly and naturally, built on mutual respect and shared values about hard work and dedication. Meanwhile, Sophia was bouncing between part-time jobs and community college classes, never quite finding her direction. She would call me regularly, asking for money to cover rent car repairs or unexpected expenses. I always said yes because she was my little sister, and I remembered what it felt like to worry about money. But each time I helped her, she seemed to resent me more rather than appreciate the support. Our mother, Linda, had always been protective of Sophia, viewing her as the baby who needed extra care and understanding. When Sophia complained about feeling overshadowed by my success, Mom would tell me privately that I needed to be more sensitive to my sister's struggles. She would say things like, "She is the baby, she needs more support," or "Not everyone can be as naturally gifted as you are, Naomi." The comments stung because they ignored all the nights I had stayed up studying while Sophia watched television, all the social events I had skipped to work, part-time jobs that helped pay for my own expenses. My success was not a gift. It was the result of countless small sacrifices that nobody seemed to notice or acknowledge. When David proposed to me at Navy Pier with a stunning 2-carat diamond ring, I felt like all my hard work and sacrifice had led to this perfect moment. We decided to have our wedding at the Millennium Park Pavilion, a gorgeous venue that reflected how far I had come from those uncertain teenage years, when I did not know if I would even be able to afford college. The wedding budget was $200,000, and David and I paid for every penny ourselves. We had both worked hard to build our careers, and we wanted our wedding day to reflect the life we were building together. But when I shared the details with my family, Sophia's reaction was immediate and harsh. "Must be nice to have everything handed to you," she said with a bitter laugh that made my stomach twist. Mom suggested that maybe we should tone down the wedding so that Sophia would not feel bad about her own situation. The suggestion frustrated me because I had never asked anyone to feel sorry for my success. I had worked for everything I had, and I deserved to celebrate my happiness without apologizing for it. Despite the mounting tension, I asked Sophia to be my maid of honor because I still believed that family loyalty could overcome jealousy and resentment. The morning of my wedding day started before sunrise in the bridal suite at the Four Seasons Hotel. I had arranged for a professional hairstylist and makeup artist to begin working at 6 a.m. because I wanted everything to be perfect. This was the day I had dreamed about since David proposed, and I was determined to enjoy every moment despite the family drama that had been building for weeks. Sophia arrived an hour late with a scowl on her face and dark circles under her eyes that suggested she had not slept well. Instead of apologizing for being late, she immediately started complaining about the early hour and the unnecessary fuss of professional styling. Her negative energy filled the room like a dark cloud, and I could see my other bridesmaids exchanging uncomfortable glances. As the hairstylist worked on creating an elegant updo with delicate pearl accessories, Sophia made snide comments about the expense. $15,000 for a dress? Really? She said loudly enough for everyone in the room to hear. I could live off that money for 6 months. The makeup artist paused her work on my face, clearly uncomfortable with the tension in the room. My mother, Linda, arrived with breakfast from the hotel restaurant, clearly hoping to lighten the mood. "Let us all just focus on making this Naomi's special day," she said with forced cheerfulness. But Sophia continued to find fault with every detail, from the imported flowers to the custom jewelry that David had given me as a wedding gift. The breaking point came when Sophia accidentally knocked over her coffee cup, spilling dark liquid all over her dusty rose bridesmaid dress. The stain was enormous and impossible to hide, which meant we had to delay the photography schedule while she went back to her room to change into the backup dress. I suspected the spill was intentional, but I did not say anything because I did not want to start a fight on my wedding day. When the photographer arrived to begin taking getting ready photos, Sophia refused to smile genuinely in any of the shots. She would either look away from the camera or force a fake smile that looked more like a grimace. The photographer, a seasoned professional, tried to coax natural expressions from her, but Sophia seemed determined to sabotage every photo she was in. David's best man, Marcus, pulled him aside during the groomsmen photos and mentioned that, "Your sister-in-law seems intense." David defended our family, but I could see the worry in his eyes. He knew how important family harmony was to me, and he could sense that something was about to go very wrong. The ceremony took place in the Lurie Garden with its stunning backdrop of Chicago's skyline. 100 of our closest friends and family members gathered to witness our vows, and the setting was everything I had imagined. Pastor Johnson, who had counseled us through our engagement, spoke beautifully about the commitment we were making to each other. But even during the most sacred moments of the ceremony, Sophia found ways to disrupt the proceedings. When she walked down the aisle, as my maid of honor, she deliberately walked off tempo with the string quartet music. She stood behind me during the vows with the expression of barely concealed disgust, sighing audibly and shaking her head at what should have been the most romantic moments. When David and I exchanged rings and spoke our personally written vows to each other, I could hear Sophia making small sounds of annoyance behind me. Several guests in the front rows began to notice her behavior, and I saw my future mother-in-law raise her eyebrows in surprise at Sophia's obvious disrespect for the ceremony. Despite the disruptions, David and I managed to complete our vows and share our first kiss as husband and wife. The guests erupted in applause and joy, but I noticed that Sophia was the only person in the front row who was not clapping. Instead, she stood with her arms crossed and a look of complete disdain on her face. The cocktail hour that followed should have been a time of celebration and mingling, but the atmosphere remained tense because of Sophia's behavior. She positioned herself in a corner of the reception area at the Palmer House Hilton Grand Ballroom and refused to participate in any of the traditional wedding activities. When the band began playing At Last by Etta James for our first dance, she rolled her eyes so dramatically that other guests began to stare. My mother spent most of the cocktail hour trying to convince Sophia to participate in the celebration. "Just smile for one night," I heard her plead in a hushed voice. But Sophia seemed committed to making her unhappiness known to everyone present, and I began to realize that the night was going to end badly no matter what I did to try to smooth things over. As the reception moved into the dinner portion of the evening, I tried to focus on the joy of being surrounded by people who loved and supported David and me. The ballroom looked spectacular, with its crystal chandeliers and elegant floral arrangements, and the four-course meal prepared by the hotel's executive chef was absolutely perfect. For a few moments, I almost forgot about Sophia's attitude and lost myself in the happiness of being newlywed. But that peace was shattered when the time came for the maid of honor speech. Sophia stood up slowly, holding her champagne flute filled with Dom Perignon, and the entire room fell silent in anticipation. I felt a knot of dread form in my stomach because I could see something dangerous in her eyes, but it was too late to stop what was about to happen. She began the speech in a deceptively normal tone. "I have known Naomi my whole life," she said, with what sounded like genuine affection. "She has always been the responsible one, the one who had everything figured out." The guests smiled and nodded, expecting a typical sister tribute filled with funny childhood memories and heartfelt congratulations. But then Sophia's tone began to shift in a way that made my blood run cold. "She always had to be perfect," she continued, her voice getting slightly louder and more bitter with each word. "She always had to be first in everything she did. The best grades, the best college, the best job, and now the best wedding that money can buy." The room began to sense that something was wrong. Conversations at nearby tables stopped as people turned to focus on what was becoming less of a speech and more of a public attack. David reached under the table and squeezed my hand, but I could feel him tensing up as he realized what was happening. "Even today, she has to have the most expensive everything," Sophia continued, gesturing wildly with her champagne glass. "The $15,000 dress, the $200,000 wedding, the perfect surgeon husband. Must be nice to live in a world where money solves all your problems and makes you better than everyone else." By now, the entire ballroom had fallen completely silent, except for the sound of Sophia's increasingly agitated voice. I sat frozen in my chair, unable to believe that my own sister was using my wedding day as an opportunity to humiliate me in front of everyone we knew. The photographer had stopped taking pictures, and even the waitstaff had paused their service to watch the disaster unfolding. Sophia's voice cracked with emotion as she reached the climax of her tirade. "What about the rest of us? What about people who cannot afford all this fancy stuff? What about people who work just as hard but do not get handed everything on a silver platter?" Tears were streaming down her face now, but they were tears of rage rather than sadness. That was when she completely lost control. "This is what you get for acting like you are better than the rest of us," she screamed at the top of her lungs, her voice echoing off the ballroom's high ceiling. The words hit me like physical blows, and I felt something break inside my chest that I knew would never heal completely. Without warning, Sophia hurled her champagne glass toward our head table. The crystal shattered against the white tablecloth, sending champagne spraying across my wedding dress and into David's face. The expensive Dom Perignon left dark stains on the Vera Wang silk that I had dreamed of wearing since I was a little girl, but she was not finished. While the guests sat in stunned silence, Sophia stormed across the ballroom toward the dessert table, where our 4-tier wedding cake from Carlo's Bakery stood as the centerpiece of the reception. The cake was a work of art covered in delicate fondant flowers and intricate piping that had taken the baker hours to create. Sophia grabbed the table edge and shoved the entire cake off its stand. 4 tiers of vanilla and chocolate layers crashed to the marble floor in an explosion of frosting fondant and fresh flowers. The sound of the impact echoed through the silent ballroom like a gunshot, and several guests gasped audibly at the destruction. I sat there in my champagne-stained wedding dress, surrounded by the wreckage of what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, and felt something fundamental shift inside me. This was not just a tantrum or a moment of poor judgment. This was a deliberate act of cruelty designed to destroy my joy and humiliate me in front of everyone I cared about. David immediately stood up and moved to shield me from any further attacks, his face flushed with anger that I had never seen before. "Are you completely out of your mind?" he shouted at Sophia, but she was not done with her performance yet. Instead of showing any remorse for what she had done, my mother Linda rushed across the ballroom and wrapped Sophia in a protective hug. "Honey, it is okay," she cooed in the same voice she had used to comfort Sophia when she was a child. "You just needed to let it out. Everyone understands that you have been holding this in for a long time." Then, incredibly, my mother turned to me with disapproval in her eyes. "Naomi, you need to understand that Sophia has been struggling with these feelings for years. She deserves to express herself, and maybe this will help you both move forward." I stared at my mother in complete disbelief, unable to process that she was defending the person who had just destroyed my wedding and attacking me for being the victim. The hotel security team arrived quickly to assess the situation and begin cleaning up the mess of broken glass and cake debris. Most of our guests began gathering their belongings and leaving early, offering quick apologies and promises to call us later. The beautiful reception that David and I had planned so carefully was ending in chaos and humiliation, and there was nothing I could do to salvage it. I stood there in my ruined wedding dress, watching my mother comfort my sister while ignoring my own pain, and realized that something inside me had changed forever. The unconditional love and loyalty I had always felt for my family had been replaced by something colder and more calculating. If they could betray me so completely on the most important day of my life, then I needed to protect myself from further damage. That night, David and I returned to our honeymoon suite in silence. He tried to comfort me, but I was beyond consolation. I sat at the desk in my stained wedding dress, opening my laptop with trembling fingers, while my new husband watched in confusion. "What are you doing?" he asked gently, but I could barely hear him over the sound of my own heartbeat. "Something I should have done years ago," I replied, pulling up the financial documents I had stored in my password-protected files. For years, I had been Sophia's financial safety net, co-signing leases and loan applications because I thought that was what good sisters did for each other. But looking at those documents now, I realized they were not acts of love. They were enabling tools that had allowed Sophia to avoid taking responsibility for her own choices. I had co-signed the lease for Sophia's apartment in Lincoln Park, a trendy neighborhood where the rent was $2,500 per month. She had convinced me that she needed my help to qualify for the apartment, promising that she would never be late with payments and that having a stable living situation would help her get her life together. The lease had my name and credit score attached to it, making me legally responsible if she defaulted. I had also put down a $5,000 deposit for Sophia's tuition at DePaul University, where she was supposed to start classes in the fall semester. She had applied late and missed the deadline for financial aid, so I had stepped in to secure her spot while she worked on getting student loans approved. The deposit was supposed to be temporary help, but I knew from experience that Sophia's temporary requests had a way of becoming permanent obligations. Working quickly before I could lose my nerve, I called the emergency customer service line for my bank. Even though it was nearly midnight, they were able to connect me with a representative who could help me freeze the co-signed lease agreement. The process required me to fax several documents and provide detailed explanations for why I was removing myself from the financial obligation, but the representative was professional and efficient. Next, I called the DePaul University Financial Aid Office and left a detailed voicemail explaining that I needed to withdraw the tuition deposit immediately. I knew they would require additional documentation, but I was prepared to provide whatever paperwork they needed to sever my financial ties to Sophia's education. If she wanted to go to college, she would have to find a way to pay for it herself. I also made changes to my life insurance policy, removing Sophia as the beneficiary and making David the sole recipient of the benefits. I updated my emergency contact information at work and at the hospital, removing both Sophia and my mother from the list of people who could make medical decisions on my behalf. Every financial and legal connection that tied me to my family's drama needed to be severed cleanly and permanently. David watched me work through the night, occasionally bringing me water or asking if I needed anything. He understood that I was processing the betrayal in my own way, and he respected my need to take concrete action rather than just talking about my feelings. By sunrise, I had systematically removed myself from every financial obligation related to my sister's life. At exactly 8:40 in the morning, I called Sophia's phone number. My hands were steady as I dialed, and my voice was calm when she answered with a groggy, "Hello." It was clear that she had just woken up, probably with a hangover from the reception champagne, and she sounded confused about why I would be calling so early. "Naomi," she said, her voice taking on a plaintive tone that I recognized from childhood. "I am really sorry about last night. I know I went too far, but I was just so emotional, and I felt like I needed to express what I have been feeling for so long. You know how I get when I bottle things up." I cut her off before she could launch into a full apology that would try to make me feel guilty for being angry. "Your lease has been frozen," I said in a matter-of-fact tone that surprised both of us. "You have 30 days to find a new cosigner, or you will need to move out of the apartment." There was a long pause before Sophia responded, and when she did, her voice was much more awake and alert. "What do you mean, frozen? You cannot just do that. My name is on the lease, too." "Your college tuition deposit has been withdrawn," I continued, ignoring her question. "You will need to reapply for financial aid or find another way to pay for your classes if you still want to attend DePaul in the fall." "You are ruining my life," Sophia screamed into the phone, her voice cracking with panic. "I cannot afford the apartment without your credit score, and I cannot go to college without that deposit money. How am I supposed to fix this mess?" For a moment, I felt the familiar tug of guilt that had controlled my decisions for so many years. Part of me wanted to apologize and restore the financial support that Sophia had come to depend on. But then I remembered the feeling of champagne soaking through my wedding dress and the sound of my wedding cake crashing to the floor, and my resolve hardened. "No, Sophia," I said with quiet certainty. "I am finally stopping myself from enabling your choices. Last night you made it clear that my success and happiness are problems for you rather than things you can celebrate. You decided that destroying my wedding day was an appropriate way to express your feelings about our relationship. I could hear her crying on the other end of the line, but the tears did not move me the way they once would have. For years, I have been your financial safety net while you made impulsive decisions and blamed other people for the consequences. I thought I was helping you by protecting you from those consequences, but I realize now that I was actually preventing you from learning how to take care of yourself. The conversation ended with Sophia hanging up on me, but I felt lighter than I had in years. For the first time in my adult life, I was not responsible for fixing someone else's problems or managing someone else's emotions. The guilt would come and go over the following weeks, but underneath it was a sense of relief that I had not expected to feel. Over the next several months, I watched from a distance as Sophia learned to navigate the adult world without my financial support. She had to move in with roommates in a less expensive neighborhood. She had to get a full-time job to support herself while attending community college part-time. Most importantly, she had to stop blaming other people for her circumstances and start taking responsibility for her own choices. My mother, Linda, was furious with me for cutting off support to Sophia, and we did not speak for almost 6 months. She accused me of being vindictive and cruel, punishing Sophia for one moment of emotional outburst. But I knew that the wedding disaster was not an isolated incident. It was the culmination of years of resentment and entitlement that had been growing unchecked. David supported my decision completely, understanding that healthy boundaries were essential for our marriage to succeed. He had seen how much emotional energy I had been pouring into managing Sophia's crises, and he recognized that I needed to invest that energy in building our life together instead. The most surprising development came 3 months after the wedding, when Sophia called me with a different tone in her voice than I had heard in years. "I think I am finally growing up," she said without prompting. "Having to figure things out on my own has been really hard, but it has also been good for me. I realize now how much I was depending on you to fix everything instead of learning how to fix things myself." We began rebuilding our relationship slowly and carefully, with clear boundaries about financial support and emotional responsibility. Sophia never apologized directly for destroying my wedding day, but her changed behavior showed that she understood the gravity of what she had done. She started making better choices about work and school, and she stopped expecting other people to rescue her from difficult situations. Looking back now, I realized that the wedding disaster was the catalyst I needed to break free from unhealthy family patterns that had been holding me back for years. Setting those boundaries was one of the hardest things I have ever done, but it was also one of the most important. Sometimes, loving someone means refusing to enable their worst impulses, even when that refusal causes temporary pain for both of you. The lesson I learned from that terrible night is that we teach people how to treat us by what behavior we are willing to accept. For years, I had accepted disrespect and manipulation from family members because I thought unconditional love meant tolerating any treatment they chose to give me. But real love requires boundaries, expectations, and consequences when those boundaries are crossed. David and I went on to build the strong, healthy marriage we had promised each other during our vows. We learned to protect our relationship from external drama while still maintaining connections with family members who could respect our choices. And sometimes, late at night when we are talking about our future together, we acknowledge that our marriage became stronger because we learned early how to stand together against people who would try to tear us down. What would you have done in my situation? Do you think I was too harsh in cutting off financial support, or was it the wake-up call my sister needed? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and do not forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories about family drama and the hard choices we sometimes have to make. Thank you for watching, and I hope my story helps you Think about the boundaries you might need to set in your own relationships.